In Pursuit of Truth, this is your host, Sir Patrick Mack. Boys and girls, we may not know everything that's going on right now, but I know one thing. Actors are acting. Some of us better than others, I guess. I want to take you over here to the Twitter page of Amichai Stein, who posted this. Many of you may have seen this already. This is courtesy of the Daily Mail TV. FBI agents and members of a Justice Department task force are searching Jeffrey Epstein's home in the U.S. Virgin Islands. How about that? So now that Jeffrey Epstein is no mo, it looks like we can put foot on the island there. So is this a recovery process? Is this a cleanup process? Is this a cover-up process? Not really sure, but I would imagine that, if the FBI really wanted to keep this quiet, they would have done a better job than they're doing. So it looks to me like they're probably recovering some evidence. And there you can see, it looks to be some snorkelers in the area there. And this was actually taken by an anonymous civilian that claimed this. But I would imagine they're looking for some sort of submarine entrances and whatnot. If you remember, Ghislaine Maxwell had a little series of tour subs, and they were running these little Disney cruises over to the island back in the day, right? And so I imagine they're probably looking for some evidence underground. As a matter of fact, there's a picture right there of a sub that was allegedly built for Stephen Hawking. How about that? So what's going on the island? Well, keep in mind there was a safe recovered from his East Side mansion in New York, and that had diamonds, had tons of cash, tons of pictures, who knows what else. There was the expired passport, lots and lots of stuff. So who knows what we're going to be able to recover from this island. But it's very interesting that we got a little bit of footage from this. Now, speaking of footage, thanks to Luke Hone, who got this screenshot from NBC, quote unquote news, taken from NBC News. Now Epstein is in a body bag being removed from the facility. And there we see some what looks to be actual medical staff as opposed to the fire department last time. And there's Epstein right there. Looks just like him. Yep, looks like a rolled up tarp from Home Depot. There it is right there. That's clearly got to be something under there. Well, while they're shuttling off that bag or whatever, we are still waiting on the autopsy results. This is from thehollywoodreporter.com. The title says the 66-year-old accused sex trafficker was found unconscious Saturday morning in his Metropolitan Correctional Center cell. And of course, we already know that official story is highly suspect. But I want to point this out that although they have an official autopsy, they also invited kind of this private autopsy, and this was Dr. Michael Baden at the request of Epstein's representatives and the awareness of the federal prosecutor. Private pathologist Dr. Michael Baden also attended the Sunday examination, according to the statement. Okay, well, who is Dr. Michael Baden? Well, let's see what Wikipedia's got to say about him. Michael Baden, born July 27, 1934, is a Jewish-American physician and board-certified forensic pathologist known for his work investigating high-profile deaths and as the host of HBO's Autopsy. Baden was the chief medical examiner of the city of New York from 1978 to 1979. He was chairman of the House Select Committee on Assassinations forensic pathology panel that investigated the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Alrighty. Now, it says down here under his professional career, Baden maintains a private forensic pathology consulting practice. He has been a consulting or lead pathologist and an expert witness on a number of other high-profile cases and investigations. He testified at the trial of O.J. Simpson, at Sergeant Evan Vela's court-martial, and at Phil Spector's murder trial. He's been hired to conduct private autopsies in a number of cases, including the shooting of Michael Brown and the deaths of New England Patriots football player Aaron Hernandez Hernandez, and civil rights lawyer and politician Chokwe Lumumba. Now, I also want to point out, too, he wasn't just a witness over there. He didn't just testify with the Phil Spector case. His wife was actually on the case. Michael Baden was born in the Bronx, New York City, to Jewish immigrants from Russian Poland. He is married to Linda Kenny Baden, who served as one of Phil Spector's main attorneys during his capital murder trial and replaced Bruce Cutler after his withdrawal from the proceedings. They have 4 children, his first marriage, which ended in 1997. Okay, outstanding. So there's a little bit about Michael Baden. So our boy Baden, and actually I think it's Baden. I just heard an interview where they called him Baden. Baden. Either way, he's been around. Examine the body of JFK. Examine the body of Martin Luther King Jr. He was on TV weighing in during Prince's death, was involved in the OJ trial, and of course his wife was representing Phil Spector. So he's always been around during these high-profile cases, and he's got quite a reputation for loving the camera. He tends to really like this, and so now he's weighing in also on Epstein. And thanks to an anon who memorized me of this story, because I found this one particularly interesting. Now, this story is from the New York Post from 2016, but the story is quite old. Journalists tell all on mobster tied to JFK might have gotten her killed. And this is the story of Dorothy Kilgallen, reporter right there pictured. She is the subject of this book, The Reporter Who Knew Too Much by Mark Shaw. And the interesting thing about her death was she had just been on this TV game show. This was back in 1965, TV game show called What's My Line, where these panelists will kind of guess the occupation of the person or who they are, depending on the clues that they give or whatever. It's an old show. And Kilgallen was on this show. She was a famous reporter, and she had run with a lot of Hollywood socialites. She had been around for quite some time. Well, she was found dead the very next day. The most powerful female voice in America was dead in her Manhattan townhouse. Her body was found sitting up in a bed, naked under a blue bathrobe with the makeup, false eyelashes, and a floral hair accessory she had worn on TV still on. Okay, so this was fresh after her appearance on this TV show, What's My Line? Well, what made her so sought after? The glamorous, razor-sharp Kilgallen delighted viewers, but behind the scenes, the dogged and courageous reporter was hot on the trail of the biggest story of her life, the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. And we just said our boy Baden had been on this case too. Now, let me take you down here a little bit. Shaw, and that's the author of the book here, makes a compelling argument that Kilgallen was the victim of foul play, likely orchestrated by New Orleans Mafia Don Carlos Marcello, who feared the result of her 18-month investigation for a tell-all book that would accuse Marcello of masterminding the JFK and Lee Harvey Oswald assassinations. Yeah, she was not buying the single shooter thing at all, and she was, I guess, very close to uncovering what was really going on here. An A-list celebrity herself, Kilgallen and her husband, Richard Kalmar, hosted lavish parties with guests ranging from actress Jane Mansfield to Beatle George Harrison. Her marital problems and longtime affair with pop singer Johnny Ray were fodder for gossip. She cultivated extensive sources, including underworld figures such as New York Mafia boss Frank Costello. Ernest Hemingway, a friend, called her the greatest woman writer in the world. All right. So it goes on to talk about the JFK assassination and how she wasn't really buying what the Warren Commission was putting down. Well, here's the connection here, is that we see that our boy, Dr. Baden, who later became the city's chief medical examiner, told a prior author, Lee Israel, that the dosage in Kilgallen's bloodstream was the stunning equivalent of 15 to 20 100 milligram Seconal capsules. The amount of barbiturates was more than enough to kill her, Baden, whatever, confirmed to the Post. But he said cops ruled out suicide and found nothing suspicious about the death. There was no suggestion that this was a homicide. All right. Now, I want to get away from Michael Baden in just a second because he's quite a deep story, but I want you to get an understanding of who this guy really is, because I do think it is important. Now, not only was he present for the autopsy of JFK, he was the one that sold the magic bullet theory right there. And there you can see it's all sciencey. It goes there and it goes pew, 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 like that. Ricochet, yeah, magic bullet theory. And that's kind of what it really came down to, right? But this was a very important part of the Warren Commission, even though they tried to downplay that. And there's a younger Michael Baden right there, looking kind of like, who was that guy? Hal Linden from Barney Miller. Magic bullet. Okay, so now that you know about this, let's take a complete left turn.
I have been down south, I have found out the American people don't realize that these Senate hearings are not spontaneous like you and I are sitting here talking. These Senate hearings are as much rehearsed as any play on Broadway. In other words, these men have crews that go in, no, I shouldn't say crews, they have assistants, that go in and talk to whomever they are going to interview, and it's rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed, and then they put it on camera. Now, people down south don't realize that, and apparently most of the people in America don't realize that this is not a spontaneous thing, that it is just as much rehearsed as any play or anything could be. Now, I cannot see if it were a spontaneous operation, if they were sitting there and asking these people questions spontaneously like you and I are talking, I could see much more reason for it. Now, the American people are sick and fed up with the Watergate, and they don't want to hear about it anymore. And they have cut all of their programs off, especially down here in the South. They couldn't care less. There are only two cities that are keeping this thing going, plus the press, and that's Washington and New York. And outside of Washington and New York, you don't hear about the Watergate other than when I pick up your papers down here or pick up magazines with Southern letters, people from the South that have written in letters. We're sick of the Watergate. Shut the mess up. So what? What they did to me in California was a heck of a lot worse than any body breaking into Democratic headquarters. They didn't steal anything. They didn't hurt anybody. They didn't kidnap anybody. I was kidnapped in California.
Okay, you just watched an interview from 1973 from Martha Mitchell, and I do want to talk a little bit about Martha Mitchell because she's quite a deep character herself. We won't be able to cover it all in this video, but she's a very important character. And back in the day, she was also contradicting this magic bullet theory, according to Michael Baden, right? So who was Martha Mitchell? Well, she didn't come from a necessarily that influential of a family, but somehow she found herself into some influential circles, including the Rockefellers back in the day. As a matter of fact, she ended up marrying John Mitchell, and John Mitchell was the former U.S. Attorney General. And of course, this was the Watergate times that this was going on. As a matter of fact, John and Martha Mitchell lived at the Watergate Hotel. And of course, the Watergate Hotel complex was where the offices of the DNC had been broken into, right? So she seemed to know quite a few things. And she ended up getting herself a job along the way somehow at Pine Bluff, Arkansas. She had also dated Al Capone's son, Sonny Capone, and she was a member of the Female Society of the Skull and Bones. So I think you see where we're going with this. But she began her work as a classified top secret secretary or a research analyst at the Pine Bluff Arsenal in Arkansas, Jefferson County, for the U.S. Chemical Corps. And at the time, she would have had a security clearance even higher than, say, like President Truman. So this was a well-connected lady, right? Now, Martha Mitchell was very familiar with all sorts of chemical warfare and things like that. As a matter of fact, she was very privy to what was going on with things such as Operation Paperclip and whatnot. And she was a close assistant to military commander Brigadier General Augustine Mitchell Prentice. And she followed him around for quite a bit. So she knew a lot of what was going on. She ended up marrying an Army intelligence officer, Captain Clyde J. Jennings, and that was also in Pine Bluff. So this woman became very, very influential. And after that marriage, she got out of the military and started to get into the D.C. circles. And that's where she started running with the crew of people like Vera Maxwell from Vera Sportswear. This really goes way, way back. But my point is with all of this, is that she was one of the originals to claim to have been an MK Ultra victim, very much like other people like Grace Kelly. Vera Maxwell was rumored to be a handler. These are things that they spoke of. There were all sorts of influential circles that these people were rolling with. And we know a lot of these people: Aristotle Onassis, Guy de Rothschild, Nelson Rockefeller, all these people who have been kind of keeping this entire MK Ultra thing going for so long. The Perones out there in Argentina, right? So my point is to get you kind of acquainted with who she was, what she was all about. But at the end of the day, she came out saying that she was an MK Ultra victim. She spoke out against the Warren Commission, and she spoke out about a lot of things, and they ended up drugging her up. She was speaking out against Watergate. As a matter of fact, it was Nixon himself who had said, had it not been for Martha Mitchell, there would be no Watergate. So obviously this woman was super connected, and here she was saying that she was this MK Ultra victim. She actually used those words, and of course back then nobody knew about this stuff. So she was one of the OGs. Now, at the time of Watergate, Nixon had approved 24-hour protection for Martha Mitchell, and at the time her husband John Mitchell. And it was June 1972 where Martha Mitchell had evidently been trying to make a phone call when someone broke into her hotel room in Newport Beach. That man turned out to be former FBI agent Stephen King, who is now Trump-appointed U.S. Czech ambassador. So he ripped the telephone out of the wall. She was trying to make a call, and she was saying that they were trying to drug her up and institutionalize her. She was panicking and making this call, and evidently Stephen King was the one who rushed in to try and stop this. Keep in mind, he was in the FBI at the time. So this man who came to check out this situation was named Dr. Dan Romaine Kirkham. He was a doctor, and his office was nearby. He came to check on this situation, and he gave Mrs. Mitchell a tranquilizer shot. And this is all according to Barbara Mitchell. Now, this guy, Dr. Dan Romaine Kirkham, he turned out to be super right-wing, and in 2005, he was convicted on federal charges of conspiracy to defraud the IRS. So this gets really crazy. Now, we know a lot of this information because of an interview that she gave with Marcia Kramer, who at the time was working for the Associated Press, and she found her at the Westchester, New York Country Club. This is where she gave the interview about what happened to her. She was talking about MK Ultra Monarch and how she was brainwashed. Well, shortly after this, she disappeared, and the idea was that John Mitchell had actually caught up to her at the time, and they took her over to the Essex House Hotel in New York. And this is where she said that a lot of the MK Ultra Monarch stuff was going on. The brainwashing was going on here at the Essex House Hotel. We also know that her kidnapping story seems to add up, because we heard this in the testimony of James McCord Jr., who was employed as chief of security for John Mitchell, and he was part of this CREEP program, which was basically keeping Richard Nixon elected. That was a whole secret project that they were working on. But he stated in 1975, after he was convicted of conspiracy in Watergate, he admitted that he had been not only her bodyguard, but basically the woman had been kidnapped by the CIA, and that she had last been seen at the Westchester, New York Country Club. Now, I could go on forever about Martha Mitchell, but I want to stop right there at the New York's Essex House Hotel. This was the hotel that Mitchell claimed a lot of the MK Ultra programming was going on at. Well, a few years later, in 1979, an extremely talented singer, Donny Hathaway, fell from the window of his 15th floor room, the very same hotel. He was 33 years old, kind of top of the world at the time, and he was not just a talented singer, he was a bit of an activist. And it was rumored that the FBI was keeping tabs on him by way of a COINTEL program under a particular program. We're not going to talk about it much today, called Black Messiah. But if you want to know more about that story about Donny Hathaway, I would search Black Messiah. But once again, here we have this talented, well-connected dude, top of the world, and commits suicide at this very same hotel. Donny Hathaway was also known to be a drug user, which kind of fits the MK Ultra description, right? But the real kicker is that the night that he died, they actually had to cancel his recording session. And this is according to fellow musician James Matume, who was at the recording studio, who had said that Hathaway was fine for a while and then just started screaming. And when they asked him what was wrong, he said that white people were trying to kill him and had connected his brain to a machine for the purpose of stealing his music. How about that? Now, keep in mind, at the time that Donny was killed, the chief medical examiner of New York City was Dr. Michael M. Baden. I I know, right? But wait a minute, it gets weirder. So Hathaway was found dead on the 15th of January, 1979, right? Well, on the 26th of January 1979, Nelson Rockefeller, four-term governor of the state of New York and former vice president of the United States of America, was also found dead due to an apparent heart attack. Now, he was found in an apartment building called the Regent House at 25 West 54th Street in Manhattan. And that apartment belonged to a 22-year-old blonde assistant named Megan Marshak, another suspected MK Ultra victim. And the reason why we think that is because she was suggesting that the Regent House was a CIA safe house. And adding more confusion to all this, it was our boy Dr. Baden that declared that Nelson Rockefeller died of a heart attack and then rapidly cremated his body without an autopsy. A guy who does autopsies cremated Nelson Rockefeller's body without doing an autopsy. So I think you're picking up what I'm putting down here, right? Essex House, Regent House, Jerry Stack House. No, I'm just making that up. Jerry Stackhouse was awesome. I want to toss in a couple side notes here. In 1972, somebody who had reported to had seen the story of Martha Mitchell and her little attack at the New Porter Inn. It was Douglas Ross. He was the manager of the New Porter Inn. Evidently, he knew the entire story about the attack. Well, he suffered a cerebral hemorrhage in the hotel kitchen. How about that? Also, during the time of the Watergate scandal, Mrs. Louise Boyer, and she was Lawrence Rockefeller's assistant. She was suddenly thrown to her death from her 10th story New York apartment, and that was in 1974. Now, I want to talk about one more house, and that is the Odyssey House. That was founded by Judy Ann Denson Gerber of Manhattan, and she had quite a bit of coin. Now, she opened up this Odyssey House. This is for drug addicts, prostitutes, and sexually abused children. So I think you see where we might be going with this, right? If you've watched any of my videos over the last year or so, you know that a lot of these programs for drug addicts, prostitutes, and sexually abused children usually end up in more drug addicts, prostitutes, and sexually abused children, if not MK Ultra type victims, right? Well, it sounds like the Odyssey House was none other, and she actually fought off quite a bit of claims of child pornography and prostitution. She battled with this the whole time. The house is still around, even though Denson Gerber is no longer alive. But she came from a very wealthy family, Gustav and Beatrice Gerber, and that would have been one of the families was from a pretty good fortune. But Gustav Gerber was part of this case between the Netherlands and the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, and this is probably where they got a lot of their coin. Now, this had to do with smuggling of Netherlands Jewish citizens' assets that were seized by the Nazi SS, and his client. His name was Verdun Joseph Archimedes. He was arrested in 1947 for just that, for smuggling Nazi transmuted securities out of Switzerland. So there's our girl Judy Ann Denson Gerber running this creepy Odyssey House, being linked to child prostitution and pornography. Well, one of the big funders of this very house was Nelson Rockefeller. He was a direct financial sponsor and a fundraiser for this Odyssey House. Okay. Well, our Judy Ann Denson Gerber was not just a wealthy socialite, creepy humanitarian. She was also the first wife of one Dr. Michael M. Bader. Yes, the same one who was also friends with Nelson Rockefeller and who also cremated him without an autopsy, and who gave us our magic bullet theory, who inspected the bodies of JFK, Martin Luther King Jr., Prince, Michael Brown, worked on the OJ case, and is now working on the Epstein case. The one and only. All right, Patriots, that's all I got for you for now. As always, if you like this video, please click like, share, and subscribe. Thanks to all of you who do that already. I greatly appreciate it. If you're new to my channel, please understand that I am very well aware of the fact that it's difficult to find my videos. You're going to get unnotified. You're going to get unsubscribed. You're going to get unclicked, whatever it is, all the time. It happens all the time. Just do me a favor. Keep checking. I highly suggest bookmarking one of my pages so that you can find it easier for yourself, because YouTube is making it more difficult. But I greatly appreciate it if you just re-click yourself, resubscribe yourself, and re-notify yourself. All my links are down below. My Gab, my BitChute, my Brighteon.com. I'm over there on DropSpace too. And I'm at Twitter at IPOT1776. That's IPOT1776. Those links are down below. My email is down below if you'd like to send me some information. If you'd like to send me something old school, my P.O. box is down below. And if you'd like to support my channel, my Patreon link is down below. All those links are down below in the video description. All right, Patriots, that is it for today. My name is Sir Patrick Mack, and until next time, stay focused.